Welcome to Get Licensed to Build. This is a free online workshop for those who want to get their California contractor's license. Our goal this morning is to go through all the parts of the license application and give you practical tips to help you complete it correctly, and to give you every opportunity to demonstrate your experience and qualifications to get your California contractor's license. We will also help get you ready for your licensing exams and give you a link to a video that shows you exactly what to expect on your test day. Today's webcast is presented by the Contractor State Licensing Board, the government agency responsible for regulating the California's construction industry. I'm Ronald James from CSLB License Verification Unit at CSLB. Joining us is Dana D'Onofrio from CSLB's License Verification Unit. Good morning.
Good morning. CSLB is overseen by a 15-member board that directs administrative policy for our operations. Our board is made up of 10 public members, including one labor representative, one local building official, and one representative of a statewide senior citizen organization, and 5 contractors. Appointments are made by the governor and the state legislature.
Please note, CSLB authorized test centers are open. It is recommended that applicants wear masks on test day. Before arriving for your test, check and follow your local COVID-19 mask guidance. If you are watching right now on either YouTube Live or Facebook Live and want to ask questions, you'll need to join us on Webex. There's a banner with a link on the top of our homepage, www.cslb.ca.gov. That is also where you can download this presentation to follow along. The presentation file includes clickable bonus links that appear on slides throughout this workshop. We're going to present a lot of information today, so don't worry if you don't get it all. We will archive the video of this workshop and put it on our YouTube channel so you can go back and watch again. To ask a question on Webex, use the Q&A feature, not the chat feature, on the bottom right of your screen. Make sure you send your questions to all panelists. Finally, we tend to get a lot of questions during these workshops on how you document your work experience and what credit you can get for your education or military service. Those questions are fine, but we will ask that you wait to send us those questions until after you see that part of the workshop. We will go through your questions at the end of our presentation, which should last about 45 minutes.
The information obtained during this webcast is not nor is intended to be legal advice. While this webcast contains general information, including legal guidelines for contractor license applications, it does not contain definitive statements of the law and may not reflect the most current legal developments in the construction industry. Such guidelines communicated or discussed during the webcast are for informational purposes only. If you have questions about the application of the law for specific situations, you should contact an attorney who is familiar with California construction law or review the 2022 edition of the CSLB publication, California Contractors License Law and Reference Book. You can download it for free on the CSLB website or purchase it directly from the publisher, LexisNexis. There are links for both at the bottom of the screen.
Here's a list of what we're going to cover today. We will take you through the process of applying for your California contractor's license. First, who needs a license? Why get a contractor's license? The minimum qualifications you'll need to get a license and what credits you might qualify for. The types of business entities, the different CSLB license classifications, including our new B2 residential remodeling classification. We will spend a lot of time giving you tips on how to help fill out your applications, including how to demonstrate your work experience to meet the minimum qualifications. Fingerprint requirements for a criminal background check. We will help you exams you will need to pass in order to get your license. And finally, the other things you'll need to have in place before your license is issued, things like a bond and insurance.
First, we'll take a look at who needs a license. Here in California, a state contractor's license is needed for all construction projects priced at $500 or more. That total includes both labor and materials. The law doesn't let you break down a project into 499 pieces. It's the entire project. Also, you cannot charge an hourly rate to get around the $500 threshold. If the hourly cost times the number of hours for the job totals $500 or more, you need a contractor's license. So what is the definition of a contractor? The definition comes from the state's Business and Professions Code. In this case, it's section 7026.1. We've got a link to the code at the top of the page if you download the presentation. I'll read the entire code, but pay special attention to the part we underlined. A contractor is any person, consultant to an owner-builder, firm, association, organization, partnership, business trust, corporation, or company who or which undertakes, offers to undertake, purports to have the capacity to undertake, or submits a bid to construct any building or home improvement project or part thereof. In other words, you don't have to do the work to break the law. You must have a contractor's license just to advertise that you can do the construction work, or even to give a bid for a construction job if the bid totals $500 or more.
So you may be asking yourself, why should I get a license? Here are a few good reasons. First, you can take pride in being a licensed professional. It shows you've taken the steps to get licensed and you're serious about your career choice. It allows you to make valuable contributions to your local community. Unlicensed contractors must operate in the shadows and cannot help make their community a better place to live. Next, it allows you to get paid for the work you do. There is value to the work done by a licensed professional. Being licensed also gives you a legal option if customers don't pay you. Unlicensed contractors do not have a legal right to take someone to court to get paid because the work required a license and they weren't licensed to do the work in the first place. Also, you would be able to use the mechanics lien laws. Next, you don't have to look over your shoulder with fear of getting caught. Contracting without a valid California license can lead to misdemeanor charges. Those caught face a first offense sentence up to 6 months in jail and or a $5,000 fine and potential administrative fines anywhere between $200 to $15,000. Subsequent violations can result in increased criminal penalties and fines. In addition, you may face felony charges if you contract without a license when one is required in a state or federally declared disaster area, or if you try to pass yourself off as a licensed contractor by illegally using a license number. Remember, there are no educational requirements to get a license. Also, you do not have to go to a license preparation school to get your contractor's license.
So, what do you need to get your license? First, it is important to understand that CSLB does not license individuals. We license companies or businesses, also called entities. Many entities are one-person operations, but know that every entity, even a one-person operation, must have a qualifier. That's someone who has the minimum experience and is responsible for the operations of the company. Here's a short list of minimum qualifications you will need. You must be at least 18 years old. You must have either a valid Social Security number or valid Individual Taxpayer Identification Number, or ITIN. You can qualify the license in one of two ways. First, you can qualify the license by having at least 4 years experience within the last 10 years as a journey person, foreperson, supervising employee, or contractor in the trade being applied for. Or you can also get a qualifier for the license who has that required experience. We will spend a lot of time talking about how you can demonstrate your experience on your application in a few minutes.
It may be possible for you to substitute your education, technical training, apprenticeship training for some of the required experience. We tend to get a lot of questions on this. First, CSLB cannot prejudge your experience. Due to the number of applications we receive and process every month, we don't have the staff time that would be needed to prejudge your experience. We can only review your documents after you apply for your license. Next, to get education credit, the coursework must be directly related to the work you will be doing as a contractor. Your education cannot be substituted for more than 3 years or 36 months of the required experience, meaning you will need at least 1 year of practical experience if you get the full 36 months of education credit. To apply for education credit, you must provide CSLB with written documentation. That means a copy of any apprenticeship completion certificates you earned, or get official technical school or college transcripts. Have the transcripts mailed to you. Do not open the envelope. Leave it sealed and include it with your CSLB application packet. Note that high school courses will not earn you any credit toward your contractor's license.
If you're looking to get education credit to meet the 4 years or 48 months of experience, you'll need to get your transcripts first. This is the most important slide of this entire workshop. This is the kind of credit you can expect to receive for your education. Note that for some areas, we are only giving you averages. You will see that your credit will be determined on a case-by-case basis. We're not going to be able to give you any more guidance than what you see on this slide. So our best advice is do not rely on the combination of your experience and education credits to barely hit the 4-year experience mark. There is always the real possibility you will not get as much education credit as you were hoping. Let's go through the chart from the most credit you can get to the least. The most education credit you can get is for a Bachelor of Science degree in construction management. That degree will get you the full 36 months of credit. Next is a master's or bachelor's degree in business or a law degree. Any one of those will get you 24 months of credit. An associate in science degree in construction management will get you 18 months credit. A bachelor's degree in some other major will get you an average of 18 months credit. An associate degree in a major besides construction management will get you an average of 6 months credit. Credit for individual college classes are given on a case-by-case basis, usually with a maximum of 6 months credit. Apprenticeships completion certificates will get you 24 to 36 months, depending on the classification of the program. For example, a sheet metal worker's apprenticeship can get you 24 months credit for the C20 HVAC and C43 sheet metal classifications only. A lineman apprenticeship gets you 36 months in C7 low voltage or C10 electrical classifications only. If you have transcripts for other technical training you've taken, you might be able to get some minimal credit as well. Again, don't use your education credit to try and squeak by the 4-year or 48-month requirement.
If you served in the military, some of that service might count as well. On the bottom of the page, you'll see a bonus link to our CSLB Military Application Assistance Program where you can learn more. The license qualifier also must pass 2 different exams, both taken on a computer at one of CSLB's authorized test centers. One exam is on California business law. The other is on the specific trade covered by the license. We also have limited specialty license, which we will discuss later. Those licenses only require the qualifier to take the law and business exam. As we mentioned, the qualifier is the one who must take and pass the required exams to qualify for a waiver or qualify for a waiver. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the waiver, only to note that you might be able to request a waiver from taking one or both exams in very specific situations. We recommend that you look at the CSLB website for more information on those specific situations. We have included a bonus link at the bottom of the page. The qualifier must also undergo criminal background check. We will go more in depth on that in a few minutes. After the license is issued, the qualifier must be in a position to exercise direct supervision and control of the company's operations. They are also responsible for all workmanship issues. It is also important to note here that if you're trying to get a B general building contractor's license and you hire subcontractors to work under you, you are responsible as the project's prime contractor for the work that they do.
The next thing you're going to need to determine before applying for your license is which type of entity your business will be. There are 4 types. First is a sole ownership, where the owner or responsible managing employee may serve as the license qualifier. Just about 2/3 of the contracting businesses in California are sole ownerships. Second, a corporation, where either of the current officers designated as a responsible managing officer or the responsible managing employee may serve as qualifier. Just under 1/3 of our licensees are corporations. A distant third is a partnership, where either of the general partners or a responsible managing employee may serve as qualifier. That's 2% of our licensees. Finally, a limited liability company or LLC, responsible managing member, responsible managing manager, sponsor, or responsible managing employee may serve as qualifier. About 1.5%, 1.5% of California construction companies are LLCs.
Now let's talk about license classifications. A contractor's license can include multiple classifications, although you must select one when filing your application. While there are more than 40 license classifications in California, they all fall under 3 distinct categories. There is a bonus link to our classification list at the bottom of the screen. First is Class A, or General Engineering Contractors. These are contractors who deal with fixed works that require specialized engineering knowledge and skill. A contractors are the ones who build projects such as freeways, skyscrapers, and dams. Today, there are over 19,000 A contractors in the state. Next is Class B, or General Building Contractors. This is the largest class of contractors in California, with more than 133,000. B contractors have a principal business dealing with any structure built, being built, or to be built that requires as part of its construction at least 2 unrelated building trades or crafts. In other words, a B contractor shouldn't take a prime contract for any project involving trades other than framing or carpentry unless the prime contract requires at least 2 unrelated building trades other than framing or carpentry. There is no limitation on B contractors to stop them from taking on projects that only include framing or carpentry. The final class is C, or Specialty Contractors. These licenses are for construction work that requires special skills and whose principal contracting business involves the use of specialized building trades or crafts. Examples from this class include C10 Electrical Contractors, C20 HVAC Contractors, C27 Landscaping Contractors, C36 Plumbing Contractors, C39 Roofing Contractors, C46 Solar Contractors, and C53 Swimming Pool Contractors, just to name a few. There are also 30 limited specialty classes under the C61 classification. These include the C61/D34 prefabricated equipment class. More than 209,000 contractors hold a C license in California.
CSLB's newest licensing classification is called the B2 Residential Remodeling Classification. The B2 allows contractors who do not have structural framing experience to get a license with CSLB. Here's what interested applicants need to know. B2 license holders must engage in 3 or more trades or crafts on a project. B2 licensees also are limited to working on existing residential wood frame structures. There are some things B2 license holders cannot do. They cannot make structural alterations to load-bearing partitions and walls. They cannot install or extend electrical or plumbing systems. They can make modifications to existing systems, for example, install recessed lighting, or alter plumbing for 2 shower heads. B2 licensees also cannot install or replace an HVAC system. Like all other CSLB licensees, B2 applicants/licensees must comply with CSLB experience, examination, license bond, and workers' compensation insurance requirements. If you have more questions about the B2 license, email the licensing division at licensing@cslb.ca.gov.
When you are ready to apply for a license, here are the 2 forms you will need. On the left is the license application. On the right is the certification of work experience. You can get these forms on the CSLB website. There is a bonus link on the left side of the page, so be sure to download this presentation. We will give you a closer look at the different sections of these forms a little later.
Okay, now let's break down the steps of the application process. First, identify who will be the qualifier for your license. That person will be responsible for exercising direct supervision and control of the company. If you're an RME or responsible managing employee as your qualifier, determine if he or she can qualify for exam waiver. Be aware of companies you pay to connect you with a licensed qualifier. In some cases, these qualifiers are in a different part of the state and cannot exercise the direct supervision needed, or they aren't willing or don't understand their role as a qualifier. Next, make sure you complete the correct application. There are 2 options. 1, the application for original contractor's license, and 2, the application for original contractor's license, examination waiver 7065. We got links to both at the bottom of the page.
The next step is determine your company name. Take a look at the application for examples. Some things to keep in mind. Your name cannot be misleading or imply that you qualify for a license classification other than what you are getting. For example, if you're going to apply for a C36 plumbing license, you cannot have a company of John Smith Plumbing, Construction, Heating, and Drywall. Corporate and LLC names must match exactly the name registered with California Secretary of State's office. The names of everyone on your Secretary of State Statement of Information must be listed on your CSLB application. You can also use what is called a DBA, which stands for Doing Business As. The main thing to remember here is the DBA name cannot be misleading, and you must use that name in all advertising and on all your contracts. Next, you'll want to get together certifications to support your work experience. You should do this even if you apply for an exam waiver. Feel free to use multiple pages if necessary. Next, be sure to note if you are a military veteran. Some of your military service may be used to meet your 4 years of experience qualifications. Also, your application may be expedited through our Military Application Assistance Program. We mentioned that a few minutes ago. There is a bonus link at the bottom of the screen for more information on that program. To participate, you must have an honorable discharge. Be sure to include a copy of your military DD 214 paperwork showing your honorable discharge with your application. The next couple of items are basic but important. Proofread your application for any missing information. Make sure you have provided an answer to all necessary fields. Second, don't forget to sign and date the application. Finally, determine if you need a special accommodation to take your exams. If so, complete a request form and submit it with your application. We'll talk about the use of translators a little later.
Next, let's take a closer look at our fingerprint requirements, which are used for a criminal background check. This is a list of those who must submit a full set of fingerprints to CSLB depending on the type of business entity. All applicants, each corporate officer, each partner, each owner, the responsible managing employee, and all home improvement salespersons. If you are in California, you must submit fingerprints electronically with what's called live scan. You can get an updated list of live scan locations in California, broken down by county, on the Attorney General's website. We have a link here, so you can simply go to the Attorney General's website and search for live scan. You will also see we have a bonus link at the bottom of the screen to the fingerprint information page on our CSLB website. If you're out of state, it's going to be tough for you to get us your fingerprints. That's because you must submit hard copies of them the old-fashioned way. Those take anywhere between 3 and 6 months for the FBI and Department of Justice to process. So you might want to consider traveling to California to get your electronic live scan done here.
So what happens if you have any criminal convictions? CSLB may deny your license for the following reasons. First, if your conviction is substantially related to the duties, functions, and qualifications of a contractor. Also, if your conviction involves fraud or a violent crime. There are other factors CSLB also considers. They are the nature and severity of the crimes, the amount of time that has passed since a conviction, and any evidence of rehabilitation that you submit to CSLB. CSLB evaluates felony criminal convictions which occurred within 7 years of the application date. For misdemeanor criminal convictions, we would look back for 3 years of the application date. That's unless the convictions are for a violent felony, certain sexual crimes, or financial crimes related to construction. CSLB denies only 1% of the total applications we get based on criminal convictions. You'll also note the bonus link to our fingerprint information page.
Okay, along with the education credits we talked about earlier, this next section is probably the most important of the entire workshop and the part of the application that causes the most headaches for applicants. It is how you demonstrate your work experience on your application. Remember, the license qualifier needs 4 years or 48 months of experience within the past 10 years in the classification for which you're applying. The experience must be at no less than a journeyman level or as a foreman, supervising employee, contractor, or owner builder. A journeyman is defined as an experienced worker who is fully qualified as opposed to a trainee and can perform trade without supervision, or one who has completed an apprenticeship program.
There is a limited amount of space on the application to show your certified work experience, so feel free to use additional pages if needed, and simply attach them at the end of the work experience form. Use as many certifications of work experience form as you need to prove the required 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. Use a different form for each certifier. Be as accurate as possible. Make sure the person certifying your work describes the actual work you performed and the dates in which you performed them. We will now share some examples of both good and unacceptable descriptions to demonstrate work experience. Do not copy and paste this information directly into your applications. These are just examples.
At the top of this chart is the classification and type of experience you're trying to demonstrate. The first example is journey person experience. The overall theme we'll keep repeating is the more specific the description, the better. Note, the work experience form should be completed by your certifier, someone who has knowledge and has observed your work experience for the classification you're applying for. That person does not have to be a licensed contractor.
Our first example is for the Class B general building contractor. The best type of description your certifier would use for journey person experience is to be specific. Journey person experience must include hands-on work like this. Bob performed rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing, and electrical, interior, exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. An unacceptable description would be something generic like residential general building trades. For foreperson experience, the description must include some hands-on work and or supervisory work. Here's an example of the best type of description. Bob oversaw other staff at job sites performing rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior, exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Again, an unacceptable description would be something generic like residential general building trades. For supervising employee experience, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at a supervisory level. An example is, as a construction lead on multiple projects, Bob supervised rough and finish carpentry, concrete forms and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior, exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Again, unacceptable would be something like residential general building trades. For out-of-state experience, the description must include examples of work done that were out of state, military, on federal lands, or work for a government entity. Applicants can qualify as a journeyperson, foreperson, or supervising employee. A tip: be specific about your duties and employment circumstances.
Our next example is for the C27 Landscaping Contractor. First, for experience at the journeyman level. The best type of description your certifier would use would be: Gene performed landscape construction, maintenance, and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips and pathways, and tree pruning. An unacceptable explanation would be gardening, yard maintenance, and planting. For a C27 landscaping contractor, the best work experience description for a foreperson would be something like: Jane oversaw other staff at job site performing landscape construction, maintenance, and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips and pathways, and tree pruning. An unacceptable description again would be something like gardening, yard maintenance, and planting. For a C27 supervising employee, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at the supervisor level. The best description would be: as a construction lead on multiple projects, applicants supervised landscape construction, maintenance, and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips and pathways, and tree pruning. Unacceptable here for the supervising employee would also be something like gardening, yard maintenance, and planting. Finally, for out-of-state contractors, the same guidance that we showed you for general building contractors is required. Be sure to include examples of your out-of-state work, as well as work for the military, on federal lands, or for a government entity. Be sure to be specific when you describe your duties and employment circumstances.
By law, CSLB must randomly review and verify all the information provided on at least 3% of our applications. Our next 3 slides run down the acceptable documentation you can use to support your work experience in the event your application was selected and you were asked to provide additional documentation. The supporting documentation should not be mailed in with your application. You will only need to provide this information if requested by CSLB staff. On the lower right of the screen, you'll see a link to this publication on our website, along with additional information on experience documentation. If you look at the chart, you can see the first column is for documents you can use if you were employed by a licensed contractor. The second column is for documenting your experience if you've been self-employed. The third column is for documentation you will need if you are applying for a Class B general building contractor license and need to use owner-builder experience to meet the experience requirements. Here's the next page of acceptable documentation. Again, you can click on the link to view and print this publication. If you do not have this information readily available, you may want to begin to gather it now, just in case you're asked to provide it in the future. Remember, you're trying to demonstrate 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. CSLB staff may contact the certifier of experience or other parties to verify experience.
One other note, CSLB gets more than 1,000 applications each month, so our application processing staff has seen it all. They've got 2 pieces of advice. First, don't cut and paste from this presentation. Also, don't try to get around having to take a trade test by applying for multiple subcategories under the C61 Limited Specialty Classification. Okay, that is the content you'll need to fill out your application. Before getting it to CSLB, double check to make sure you did not miss anything. Be sure to sign and date it as well. And don't forget to include the all-important $450 application fee. You'll pay the initial license fee of $200 for a sole owner license or $350 for a non-sole owner license after you pass your exam or exams. Then put your application packet in the mail to CSLB or hand deliver to one of our public counters. We've got a bonus link at the bottom of the screen with our office locations.
We'll now go over the parts of the application. Section 1, the business name and address. Now that we have gone through the information you'll need to include, here's a closer look at the application so you can see where the information goes. Section 1 is where you'll list your business name. Remember, when selecting a business name, make sure that the name that you have selected is compatible with the classification and the entity that you're applying for and is not misleading. If your business is a corporation or LLC, you will need to make sure that the name you provided in this section matches exactly the business name registered with the Secretary of State. In line 2, you will indicate what classification you're applying for. The mailing address and phone number that you list on line 3A and 3C will be made public on CSLB's website once you're licensed. Section 2, the business entity. In Section 2, you will select your business entity. If you're applying for a corporation or LLC, you will need to provide your registration number provided to you by the Secretary of State. Make sure to pay extra attention to the instructions in this section pertaining to the entity for which you are applying.
Section 3, qualifying individual, full legal name and address. In Section 3, you will list the qualifier's information. Remember, the qualifier is the person that meets the experience requirements and will be responsible for the direct supervision and control of construction operations. The qualifier will be the person taking the exams. On line 6, you will list any previous or current license numbers you've held. You will also need to list the percentage of the new business owned by the qualifier. For example, if you were the only person that would be listed on the license, you would enter 100%. On line 7, you will need to indicate the position that will be held by the qualifier. Each entity has different personnel requirements. You will need to make sure that you have listed all positions depending on the entity you have selected. You can find more information on this on pages 2 through 4 of the application instructions. Line 8 is where you will sign and date your application. Section 4, personnel full legal names and addresses. Section 4 is where you will list the personnel information for all remaining personnel that will be listed on the license. For example, if you are applying for a corporation, you will need to indicate who will be the responsible managing officer or employee, president, secretary, and treasurer. Again, more information can be found on page 4 of the application instructions. If you have more than 4 people on your license, you can make additional copies of this page and include it with your application. For corporations and LLCs, you will want to make sure that all personnel that are listed with the Secretary of State are listed in this section. All personnel that will be listed on the license must sign the application in Section 4.
Section 5 is a series of yes and no questions, so we're not going to cover those here. Section 6, Qualifier Education, Apprenticeship, Licensure, and Military. You may be granted credit towards your 4-year experience requirement based on your education. Question 17 asks if you have completed an educational or apprenticeship program. You will need to submit official sealed transcripts if you would like to be considered for this credit. If you attended formal training or an apprenticeship program, you'll need to provide a certificate of completion. Get those sealed transcripts mailed to you and then include the sealed transcripts with your application packet. Do not have the program send transcripts directly to CSLB. You don't want to take the chance that we're not able to match them up with your application. CSLB may grant you up to 3 years of credit based on your education. This credit is not on a year-to-year basis, meaning if you have a 2-year college degree, you won't necessarily be granted 2 years of credit towards the experience requirement. You may qualify for this credit regardless of when you completed your education. The 10-year time frame does not apply to education. You may also apply for this credit even if your education was received out of the country. If your degree is in another language other than English, it must be translated and evaluated by an accredited evaluation service that does business within the United States. Now we'll move on to the certification of work experience. Part 1. Now we will discuss the certification of work experience. Part 1 will be filled out by you, the applicant. Here you will list the information about your employer where you gained your experience. If you are self-employed when you gain the experience, please make sure to check the box in line 2. If you are applying for a B general construction license and will be using experience obtained while working on your own property, make sure to mark the box in line 4 and complete an owner-builder construction project experience form that we will discuss later. Part 2 will be filled out by your certifier. In this section, the certifier must include the dates in which you obtained the experience. They must also select if you are working on a part-time or full-time basis. Keep in mind, if you are working part-time, you will receive 50% credit for that time, which means you will need to provide 8 years of experience within the last 10 years to meet the 4-year requirement. On line 6, your certifier will need to list the duties you performed or supervised that are considered critical for the classification you're applying for. You can read a description of critical duties in CSLB's Description of Classifications booklet available on our website. Do not copy and paste the description from the booklet. This is only to give you an idea of what CSLB considers critical duties for each classification. Your certifier should complete this section in their own words and be as complete and accurate as possible. The final part of the work experience certification is also to be completed by your certifier. They need to list their relationship to you and provide their contact information. Lastly, they will need to sign and date the certification.
Owner Builder B General Building Construction Project Experience, Part 1 of 3. The next form we will discuss is the Owner Builder B General Building Construction Project Experience form. This form only needs to be completed if you are applying for the B General Construction License and you want to receive experience credit for working on projects on your own property. A separate form is required for each project on the property. The experience must be verifiable through building permits, final inspections, and other documentation. You will need to list the building permit number on line 6. On line 7, you will need to provide the scope of the project. Part 2 of 3, in boxes 8 through 10, you will need to provide more detailed information about the project. Part 3 of 3, question 11 asks if other general construction contractors worked on the project and what trades they performed. Remember, this information should be as complete and accurate as possible. With all the information we just covered, this is a good time to remind you that we are recording this workshop. We'll post the video to our YouTube channel so that you can go back and rewatch it in case there's anything you missed. Okay, so we've got your application submitted. How do you check the status of that application? Here are two resources. First is the Secure Checked. You'll need your application fee number and contractor PIN number to get an update. We'll send you that information after we receive, cashier, and key into the system your completed application. The second way to check is to look online at our processing times. Each week, we update our website with the date we received the paperwork for a specific process. So look for the date being worked on and know that if the date shown is after the date we likely received your paperwork, it's likely we're busy working on your application. As you can imagine, CSLB receives hundreds, if not thousands, of documents every day, and we process them in the order that they have been received. So be sure to take the extra time getting the application right so we don't have to send it back to you to correct and then have to start processing your application again. When your application has been posted, CSLB will send you a notice to appear for examination and a study guide. You should get your exam notice at least 3 weeks prior to your exam date. CSLB has many authorized test centers throughout California and encourages candidates to take their exams at the nearest test center.
If you are an applicant whose first language isn't English and you don't feel confident taking your exams in English, we do allow you to use a translator. The translator, who you provide, simply reads you the exam questions. Question 16 on the application asks if you need to use a translator to complete the examination. The translator must be approved by CSLB in advance. You cannot just show up on the day of your examination to the test center with someone to translate the exam for you. When you get an exam date, make sure you do not miss it. If you fail to appear for your exam, you will have to pay a non-refundable $100 fee to reschedule. That fee may be waived once with documented evidence of a medical emergency or other circumstance beyond your control. Also, we have study guides available for each of our exams. Included in each study guide, you will find a list of sections and topics covered by the exam. They also include sample questions, how each section of the exam is weighted, and recommended resources that you can use to prepare for the examination. These study guides are available online on our website. There's a bonus link to them on the bottom of the screen.
Here's a quick look at two of those study exams. The first is the Law and Business exam, which all qualifiers must take, no matter which license classification, including the D-Series limited classes. You can see the guide contains a breakdown of examination topics, some test strategies, sample questions, and resources that were used to help create that exam. You will see the same format on the B General Building Study Guide. We would recommend that you really pay attention to the exam content here, especially how we have it broken down, what percentage of questions there will be on each of the 5 topics on the exam. On the lower right of both of these 2 slides, you will see bonus links to the actual study guide, as well as a link to the complete list of study guides.
We do have COVID-19 procedures in place for applicants on test day. These procedures could change, so check the CSLB website before your test date. Plan to arrive at least 15 minutes early for your exam. Give yourself extra time to get checked in. Applicants are recommended to wear a face mask or other face covering. Check and follow your local COVID-19 mask guidance before arriving for your test. If you appear ill, you will have to reschedule your exam for at least 5 days later at no additional charge. And you will not be admitted into the test center more than 15 minutes prior to your exam time. We've also produced a short What to Expect on Test Day video that you can watch on our YouTube channel. The link is at the bottom of your screen.
You'll take your exam on a touchscreen computer. Before starting, you'll see an on-screen tutorial that will take you through the process. The exam itself consists of multiple choice questions. You'll also see a space on each question where you can, if you want, submit a comment about that question. You'll get 3.5 hours to complete each exam. Don't arrive late, or that may reduce the amount of time that you get to complete your exam. You'll get your results at the end of the exam. If you do not pass the exam, you will not be allowed to review the questions you missed, but you will get a showing how you did on each section of the exam. You can reschedule the exam as many times as you need to within the 18-month period, as long as you pay the non-refundable $100 rescheduling fee each time.
After you pass your exam, what happens next? First, you'll need to pay your initial license fee, $200 for a sole owner license and $350 for a non-sole owner license that will be good for 2 years. You'll also need to complete an online asbestos open book exam. Plus, you'll need to file your required $15,000 contractor's surety bond and possibly some other bonds depending on what type of business entity you'll have. And you'll need to get your required insurance policy. If you've got employees, you'll need to get workers' compensation insurance. If you're going to be an LLC, you'll also need liability insurance. See our website for more information. Please note that your insurance company or broker can submit your insurance information to CSLB directly on our website. If you don't have employees, you must file a workers' compensation exemption with CSLB. You can do that online as well.
In about 5 to 10 business days, CSLB will send you a wall certificate and plastic pocket license card. Display the wall certificate in your main office or chief place of business. Carry your pocket card with you, especially in situations where you're going to solicit business, talk to potential customers, or sign contracts. We encourage consumers to ask to see your pocket license. If you're going to have salespeople working for you, be sure to get them registered as a home improvement salesperson with CSLB. Check our website for more on how to do that. Your license will be good for 2 years. It'll expire on the last day of the month when it was issued. Be sure to put that expiration date on your calendar, in your phone, anywhere you need so you won't forget it. CSLB will send you a renewal notice in the mail approximately 60 days before it expires, but ultimately it is your responsibility to renew your license on time.
Here are a couple other important deadlines to keep in mind. First, notify CSLB within 30 days if you move or change your business address. Your renewal notice will be sent to the address of record that we've got on file. If you're not at that address anymore, you're probably not going to get it. Plus, the Postal Service will not forward state government mail. Finally, notify CSLB within 30 days of all changes to personnel on your license, especially when it involves the qualifier of the license.
Once you get your license and get to work, you might want to hire someone as a salesperson to solicit, sell, and negotiate home improvement contracts on your behalf outside of your place of business. These people are called Home Improvement Salesperson, or HIS. Without an HIS, the official personnel of record on a license are the only ones who can sell, solicit, negotiate, or execute a contract. That includes individual contractors, licensed qualifiers, partners, corporate officers, and LLC responsible managing officers, members, managers, or employees. An HIS can work for more than one contractor. The licensee must inform CSLB in writing when they either associate or disassociate an HIS with their license.
There are a couple of exceptions to note. First are those who only schedule appointments for the contractor or registered HIS, and bona fide service and repair people. These are the folks you call out for repairs, including for things like air conditioning, heating, and plumbing. But those service and repair people are limited to the work that was initially requested by the buyer or homeowner. For example, if your AC goes out and you call an HVAC company to come out, the service person does not have to be a registered salesperson. But if they go beyond the repair itself and sell you a new HVAC system, they would have to be a registered HIS. Also, don't employ an unregistered salesperson. That subjects you to administrative discipline, and the salesperson might get a citation or possibly even a criminal misdemeanor. We've got bonus links at the bottom of the page if you want to look at the actual code sections of law.
Good morning. Okay, this is our presentation. Now it is time to answer your questions. Remember, if you're going to ask a question, to invite all panelists so everyone can see the questions that are being asked. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Okay, bachelor's and master's degrees outside the United States qualifies. So they do, however, they do have to be transcribed into English from a facility within the US so that we do know that the degree is equivalent to the US degree. Um, Again, it would be based on what you are applying for and what the degree was for to actually give you the credit or actually determine the credit, the amount of credit that you would get. Okay, Brenda, my husband wants me to get the license for him since he does not read or write English. Can I do that? So, in order to get a license, you have to have experience doing the trade that you're applying for. So, if you do not have experience in the trade, you would not be able to get the license. In the application process, you have to be able to show your journeyman level experience, which is a minimum of 48 months, which is equivalent to 4 years. You would have to be able to show that with an employer, without an employer. But yeah, you can't just do it because he can't read or write in English. You're more than welcome to help him with this application if he's the one who has the experience. As you heard within the presentation, he can request a translator when he has to go to test so that somebody could, relay the questions for him from English to Spanish or whatever language that you speak. But the person who's applying is the one who has to have the experience. So if you don't have the experience, I would not recommend that you apply for it. He would need to apply for it. Again, Brenda, husband has more than 10 years in painting business, but he wants to get the general license for everything since he has knowledge by working for builders. Can he get a general license or just a painter's license? So if he has the experience in the painting, again, a minimum of 48 months, equivalent to 4 years, that might be his best course of action. The general B classification, he would have to be able to show, again, 4 years, 48 months of experience doing general B work. If his specialty is painting and he hasn't done framing, if he hasn't done any other true unrelated trades, I would say no, don't apply for the general B, to stick with the painting. But again, that's up to you guys what you're going to do. When the application comes in, it'll be processed, it'll be reviewed. If we need to call employers, we will. But I would stick with what would be his specialty if there's any doubts of what experience he has or what he can qualify for. Daniel, most of my experience was done overseas where there was not a contractor present. What options do I have to have my work validated? So with all applicants on your certification of work experience, you are to have a certifier. A certifier is someone who has firsthand knowledge of your experience. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a contractor. It could be somebody who you work side by side with, somebody who was on site. It could be a foreman, a supervisor. It could be your friend who was working with you side by side. Somebody who has the firsthand knowledge, who actually saw you do it, is who we're looking for. So again, it doesn't have to be a contractor. Contractor doesn't have to be present, but somebody who actually saw the work being performed, who can certify that the work was performed. Thomas, if I am a Washington State contractor, can I do contract work here in California? No, not until you apply for a California license. We do not have reciprocity with Washington, so whatever classification that you would apply for, you would be required to test. If it was A, B, or any of the C's, there would be a trade test with the law exam. If it was a D class, it would just be the law exam. But with your Washington State contractor license, you cannot do work in California. You would have to apply for our license. Thomas, if I don't pass the exam, does the state holder lower scores against you on future exams, or is it recorded against your license? So we have several people who it does take multiple times to pass the exams. There is a fee each time you have to go back in and take the test. I believe there's 3-4 weeks in between that you can take the test. I know you can't go back right away and do it. But I do not believe that they lower the test scores. You have to meet the minimum criteria. And there's nothing held against you. Again, as I stated, there's several people who it might take multiple times for them to pass the exams. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't know what you don't know what the exam's about, but maybe you're a bad test taker. So it's nothing that we record or hold against anybody. You're just required each time that you do have to retake an exam to repay a testing fee. Elliot, I've been working on a house that has a lease option to buy. Does this qualify as work valid for past work? So you don't own the home, is what I'm assuming. If you own the home, it would be owner builder. If you were doing the work to upgrade different portions of your home, if somebody hired you to do work on the home, you would have an employer. I'm not quite sure about you have a lease option to buy. If you're renting now, or if this means, what exactly that means. In this case, I would ask for more details, but I would ask that you send those to our licensing email, which is licensing. It's LICENSING at cslb.ca.gov. And be a little bit more specific with your question and give a little bit more details so that somebody can have all of the information to make a determination on that. If you have any other experience, if you did work for a contractor, it's a possibility that you could use that. I wouldn't say don't send this in, but there's no guarantees that you would actually get credit for it. You would need finalized permits, inspection reports, and whatnot when it's owner builder on your own home. Elliot, you live on the property, but again, I just don't know, is that renting or is that if you are actually buying the home? So Please send an email, like I stated, to the email address that I said, the licensing at cslb.ca.gov, with a little bit more information. Michael, good morning. Do certifier forms need to be original when submitted with applications? Scan copies. Scan copies are fine as long as we have an actual signature from the certifier. We realize that, maybe the certifier's in Utah and you worked in Utah, and you're going to email the form over to them. As long as we have something, they do not have to be originals. Copies are fine. What forms of payment do you accept for the application fee? At the front desk, they accept cash. It does have to be the exact amount. They cannot give cash back or change back. I believe you can write a check. You could have a money order. Again, the correct amount of the application fee, and they do have credit card options. Fernando, is handyman needed to be a B license? I'm not quite sure what you're stating. Do you have to be a handyman to be a B licensee? You don't. However, you do have to have the experience. So again, 48 months. For a B, you would have to have some sort of framing with 2 unrelated trades. And you'd have to be able to document that on your certification of work experience with a certifier. It would definitely help, obviously, if you were a handyman and you had some of that behind you. Your other option would be, if you are a handyman and you did no framing, would be to apply for the B2, which would be 3 unrelated trades. Again, no framing. And you are limited on what you can do. There are no structural alterations. You cannot install electrical or plumbing, and you can't install or replace your HVAC. So it would, if you don't have that framing experience, this might be the way for you to go. Again, 48 months of experience is needed for that. There is a trade exam as well as a law exam for that also. Jonathan, thank you for the information. Does all the information given today apply to the B2 as well? Again, what I just stated, yes. So B2 is a regular classification now. It is our handyman or remodeling classification. It just doesn't include framing of any sort. Like I stated, no structural alterations to load-bearing walls. You can't install electrical, plumbing, or install or replace HVAC. So it is 3 unrelated trades. You'd have to be able to put that, again, your experience on the work cert with that information from your certifier. So yes, the information given today does apply to the B2 classification. Martin, how can I download this video? If I'm not mistaken, the video will go on YouTube after. I'm not so certain how long after the presentation, but it will be on YouTube for you to rewatch or to save in your archives and watch when you want to again. I know the old ones are on YouTube as well, under our channel of CSLB. Elliot, can I order a test or sample questions to go over prior to the test? So we do have samples on our website, which is cslb.ca.gov. However, we don't send out sample tests to you, to my knowledge. We've transitioned our testing over to a facility that allows more testing for all the applicants. So it's no longer in-house. However, again, the test and sample questions, you can definitely find them on our website. It's just like it says, it's just a sampling of what possibly could be on your trade test or what possibly could be on the law exams. Daniel, is there reciprocity with Arizona? There is, however, it's very limited. I want to say it's only a handful of classifications. If you were to send in an application, you would have to have the completed form filled out from Arizona before sending it in, and complete it and put it in with your application, so that when we got your application, we could go ahead and send it to our classification deputy for review. He will determine whether or not that classification does have reciprocity with Arizona, and if we can go ahead and waive the trade exam for you, if there is a trade exam. You are still required to take the law, even if you get waived on the trade, and you will always need to send in a certification of work experience. Even though you've held that license in Arizona, you still have to show us your work experience. Another prerequisite for the reciprocity is you have to have had that license for a minimum of 5 years out of the last 7, and it would have had to have been in good standing with that other state. And just as a little note, we do have reciprocity with Arizona, with Nevada, and Louisiana. Those are the only 3 states we have the agreement with right now. Jonathan, I currently work as a self-employed handy person. What is the best way to document work? Are invoices with pictures sufficient? While I still need a certifier. So everybody needs a certifier. You will have to fill out the certification of work experience, part 1. Your certifier will fill out part 2, and everybody needs a certifier. Again, a certifier is somebody who has firsthand knowledge of your experience. It's not necessarily a contractor. It could be the owner of the establishment that you're working on. It could be, again, somebody who you work side by side with. We do not accept pictures, unfortunately. Invoices, you may be asked for invoices. However, I would not send them in initially. If you are a handy person, it just depends on the classification that you are going to apply for. Again, if you're applying for the B2, 3 unrelated trades, no structural, again, no electrical, plumbing, HVAC installation, or replacing or extending. And I mean, it should be pretty straightforward on what you know, or what you're going to put on that work. So let's say you do painting, you do drywall, and landscaping. Those are 3 unrelated trades. So your certifier would need to specifically mention those as your 3 trades if you're applying for the B2. Now, if you're applying for the B, your certifier would need to put your B, your structural framing, with at least 2 unrelated trades. It'll be a little harder to do the self-employed with the B, because we would ask for finalized permits and inspection reports, because we would want to see that somebody signed off on these, that this was actually what was done at the site. And probably we would ask for project list. If you have an employer, if you're working for a contractor, let's say, it's a little easier to verify. If not, then we have to do a little bit more legwork to prove that that work experience was done, and that we can pass you on. And just a reminder that CSLB is a part of DCA, so our mission is to protect the consumer. We do want you to go out there with the most knowledge you can possibly have, on top of what you already know about your trade, being with the public. So our rigorous application process, as well as testing, it's in place for the consumer. So we know you're going out there with what we've equipped you with, or what we've deemed necessary for you to get that contractor's license. So yeah, just keep that in mind. We do want you to succeed as a contractor, and we do want the consumer to be protected at the same time. Lourdes, what if the wife applies to the company and studies for the test and owns 20% of the company? Well, the wife would still have to have the experience. In order to study for the test, you have to have the experience. Again, 48 months, 4 years, equivalent to 4 years, in the classification that you're applying for. It's not just studying for the test. We want to know that that person who's applying is at journeyman level, that doesn't need supervision and can go out there and perform their trade, for the consumer. Other than that, I'm not quite sure. Applies to the company and owns 20% of the company. The qualifier is the only one that we require to give us a percentage of ownership of the company if they're applying for a corporation, an LLC, or a partnership. As a sole owner, they automatically own 100%. So again, Lourdes, the only thing I could tell you is that the wife would have to have the experience in order to take the test. Daniel, are there special circumstances for someone who has ADHD if I need more time on the test? There is. So there is a special accommodation form that you can, I'm not certain if it's on the website, I believe it is, that you can fill out and you can request more time for if you have a learning disability or learning, need a little bit more time, that you can request that. It is a special form. If the form isn't online, I would suggest that you write a written request with your application so that it's all together. And when your processing technician is reviewing your application, they see that so that they can go ahead and pass that on to testing. Pedro, when renewing a license, we only pay the fee or do we have to retake the exams? No. So if you are already licensed and it's time for your renewal, you're just paying the renewal fee, as well as getting any other insurance requirements that might be needed at that time. You do not retest. The only time you're retesting is if you've let that license lapse over 5 years and you don't hold the classification anywhere else, then you would have to reapply and you would have to retake the exams. Marcella, I don't have work experience but know about law. Can I get a license to join with another person? So I would say you wouldn't be able to take the exam. So if you don't have the experience, you would not, there's no splitting up the exam. So somebody who has the work experience could take the trade and you would take the law exam. That's not how it works. It's the person who has the experience. The qualifier on the application is the person who will take both. They go hand in hand. So if they take the trade, they're going to take the law. Obviously, you can always join somebody else to make a license. And again, if you don't have the experience, they would be the one who would be doing the testing once we verified their work experience and that they were journey level in the classification that they applied for. Thank you, Elliot. Just make sure that that email address, again, is licensing@cslb.ca.gov. Richard, good morning, everyone. I just wanted to know more on the waiver for disability for veterans. So this is relatively new and it only has to do with the fees. It doesn't have to do with the experience. So experience is still necessary for a contractor's license, veteran or not. As far as veterans go, we do expedite the application process when we have a valid DD 214 that shows an honorable discharge. If it doesn't, or if you don't have the DD-14 with that information, it just goes in the regular process with applicants. Unfortunately, we're not able to expedite testing anymore because we've outsourced our testing to make it more, to give more options for our applicants. So the testing wouldn't be expedited, but when it comes to the processing of the application, it would be. Again, the waiver is just for fees. I believe because it, like I said, it is fairly new, so I don't have a lot of information on it. I do believe that it's like 50% off. I'm not certain. Richard, I would ask you to send an email to the licensing at cslb.ca.gov email with your information, and we can forward that on to our veterans assistance personnel who could answer that better for you. Thomas, aren't disaster relief contractors from out of state allowed to work in California? All contractors who work in California have to be licensed in California. So if they're coming from out of state, they'd have to apply and be approved for the license before they would be allowed to work in California. Yeah. Gene, is it best to have more than one qualifier? You can only have one qualifier per classification. So if you have a corporation, LLC, or a partnership, and you have the B classification, only one person can hold that class at a time on the license. You could have multiple classifications with different qualifiers, but each class has to have one qualifier at a time. They cannot have multiple. Art, I'm a handyman applying for a B2 license. What are the 3 trades? They just have to be 3 unrelated trades. Again, no structural framing to load-bearing walls, no alterations, no installation of electrical, HVAC, and plumbing, no replacement of HVAC. It could be as simple, as I stated earlier, as painting, let's say drywall and landscaping. It just depends on what you performed and what fits, within that realm. They might be 3 different classifications. It just can't, again, include any framing or the installation of electrical, HVAC, and plumbing, as stated in our workshop here. Thomas, is there a license category for disaster relief contractors? No, there isn't. The classification would be specific to what you were trying to perform in California. Jonathan, can you give me an example of the 3 unrelated trades? I just did. So again, it could be painting, drywall, and landscaping. It could be lath and plastering, cabinetry, and let's say I'm drawing a blank. And tree trimming, tree service, it just has to be 3 unrelated trades, that don't go hand in hand. Again, no framing, no structural installation of, no installation of electrical, HVAC, and plumbing. Art, I have worked for interior designers and residential commercial management companies. Can I use them on my certification statement? If you worked for them, they can definitely be your certifier. Again, your certifier does not have to be a contractor. It can be somebody who has firsthand knowledge of the work experience when it was gained. Dependent upon the classification, we might ask for more information, but they can be used. Thomas, for the bond monetary requirements, roughly $15,000. Can family or associates co-sign for your bond? That's completely up to the bond company. That has nothing to do with CSLB. We require that you have right now a $15,000 contractor's bond, but as far as when you go to pay for it, apply for it with a bonding company, that's completely up to them. Thomas Burke, if you don't own your own home as collateral, when I was young, I had my parents co-sign for the bond. Yeah, you'd have to talk to the bonding company specifically about that. CSLB does not get involved with it. We require the bond, but how the bond is obtained, who pays for it, that's none of our business. Elliot, during COVID, all of the government offices in West Hollywood were shut down. The laws were changed during that time. What do we know? What do we do about that work? Well, our offices were still open, COVID or not. We did telework, but we were here um, working. We never shut down. Um, our laws, as far as I'm in the know, they never changed. So I don't really know what you mean. Laws were changed during that time. And what do you do about that work? Um, we're still going to require, depending on classification. We might ask for more information depending on what you apply for. However, 48 months, 4 years equivalent work experience signed by somebody who has firsthand knowledge, a certifier. Um, if you are applying for a B or let's say an A or something that might require a finalized permit or a inspection report, you know, um, we might still ask for that. Um, things weren't, I mean, obviously things were a little different, but laws weren't changed here in Sacramento. I mean, you still have to pull a permit for your work, whether or not you got that permit right away when you walked into an office, or if that office was open, or if they mailed it to you, that permit was still sent to you if you applied for it and if it was approved. So I'm not quite certain about what laws you're stating were changed at that time. Um, if you have additional information, I would encourage you to use the licensing email address with that more information so that we can make a better determination or give you a little bit of more guidance on your question. So again, that email address is licensing@cslb.ca.gov. Okay, so I don't see any more questions. So if you have a question, please go ahead and submit it. If not, we'll give you a couple more minutes on that. Thank you, Elliot. That would be the best thing, just so that we have a little bit more information. Thomas, how long does the license process take if all things go smoothly? So right now, like I said, we never closed during COVID. Obviously, we're a little bit more lenient and back in the offices now. Most people are in the office. However, applications also did not slow down. So I believe applications are about 4 to 6 weeks out right now. And that might be 4 weeks out, if I'm not mistaken, is where we're at on new applications. I don't know. I might say with testing and testing goes good, and let's say we don't have to return your application for correction, maybe 6 to 8 weeks, um, just as a rough estimate with processing times. Erwin, what does a gutter contractor require to be licensed? Thank you for your time. So it depends. So if you're going to be a metal gutter contractor, obviously you have to have experience with the C43, which is sheet metal. And so you are able to do duct work and whatnot with the metal, um, with the sheet metal gutters. So you would have to be able to show that you could um, um, fabricate them, install them, make sure that, um, sorry, um, you'd have to be able to show that you can make them and that you can install them and that they work properly. Um, Now, if you were going to do non-metal, it would be, sorry, I don't have these at my, actually, we do have a D24, which is metal products also. So um, you could do plastic, you could do aluminum, you could do metal, but you have to be able to show that you can fabricate them and that you can install them. Um, Always 48 months, equivalent to 4 years experience, certified by somebody who has firsthand knowledge of that. Depending on the classification that you do apply for, whether it be a C or one of the D subcategory classifications, would determine whether or not you have a trade exam to take. Once we would review your application and see what was certified on your certification of work experience, we would make the determination, okay, is this a D subcategory or should this actually be the C? It's really dependent upon what your certifier claims your work experience is, which one is going to be. But again, still have to have 48 months, as all applicants do. Jean, also, is it good to put in the application letters from clients or real estate agents with work with or for? Does more mean better? Not necessarily. I would recommend that you send in your certification of work experience. That's what we're going to base things on. If we need additional information, then we will reach out to you and let you know that we need additional information. Um, if it's just a letter, it's really not going to make a difference. Um, Letters of recommendation are not equivalent to the certification of work experience. So we do want to see the work experience specific to the classification that you're applying for, all written out by your certifier. Yeah, letters of recommendation are not, they're not necessarily going to do anything more than your certification of work experience is going to do. Okay, do we have any more questions? Okay, so I don't see any more questions, so I'm going to go ahead and close this up. So that's all the time we have today for our workshop. I want to thank you for all your questions. If you have any other questions about your application, we do encourage you to drop an email to our licensing division. Here's the email address. It's licensing@cslb.ca.gov. Again, that's licensing@cslb.ca.gov. If at some point you need to reschedule your exam, you can get the process started by dropping an email to exams@cslb.ca.gov. We've also put together a list of available resources for women considering a career in construction. If you haven't already, be sure to download this presentation to get them. You can download the presentation on a green banner on the top of our homepage, which is www.cslb.ca.gov. If you're watching the archived video of this workshop on our YouTube page, you'll find a link to the presentation down below. We welcome your comments or topics for future webcasts. Just drop us an email at social@cslb.ca.gov. Special thanks to our licensing division and public affairs office for their help on this workshop. The Get Licensed to Build workshop is a copyrighted production of the California Contractor State License Board. Thanks for watching.